Has everybody seen those clips of Henry Cavill talking about his sword? Not like that. Jeez. I mean the video where he spends 6.5 minutes nerding out about special effects and fight choreography and half-length swords, and it's glorious. And I'm way too much of a wuss to watch more than one episode of The Witcher, but my gosh, it does a great job of selling you the world in which you find yourself, and the psyche of the main character. And the fight scenes are really important for this because they, like the man himself, do what they need to with whichever tool works best for the moment. They're gory because the world is dark and gritty. They're intricate to sell us the character and skills of Geralt, who is a witcher, which is to say the result of a long, painful process that you're not likely to survive, but if you do, you're going to be an absolute badass by the end of it. And the fights are also intricate because they can be, because Henry Cavill is a man who loves his swords. Get your mind out of... You know what, never mind. My name is Jill Berup, and I like to pretend to beat people up while reciting lines from Shakespeare, or The Road to El Dorado, or Portal 2. I haven't got to that one yet though. By which I mean I take part in stage combat classes where you combine acting with weapons you pretend have edges, and it's insanely fun. Also a great icebreaker at parties. I have had many conversations about The Witcher and about the Blaviken fight specifically. Most people seem to agree with me that it's great. There are some more experienced sword fighters who have criticised its lack of realism, shall we say, given that they are in a quasi-medieval setting. I mean, Witchers are supposed to be supernaturally empowered fighters, but anyway, I would argue that this fight is actually better than you think it is. Why? Well, two things stand out. How well the first section weaves the multiple attackers into one shot, and how well the second section uses more traditional fight editing to convey character and story, and makes good use of Henry Cavill, Emma Appleton, and Lucy Cork, the stuntwoman. Side note, I just had to Google that she isn't actually called Emma Appleby, and I've no idea where I got that from. Is it a restaurant? I feel like it might be a restaurant. The Witcher books take place in a setting where everything is very morally grey. The purported worldview is really cynical, and that is emphasised in everything from the plots, to the production design, to the fact that everything in the scene is some shade of mud or grey. Up to and including Geralt's hair. Mud! Mud everywhere! Nobody bathes! Okay, I take it back, people bathe, but mostly for the meme potential. Sorry, distracted by the fan service there. Where was I? The first part of the fight, if we're going to be sensible and chronological about this, is this epically long take with Geralt just mowing these dudes down. Like, hello, watch me deflect a crossbow bolt or two and then just get into it with this large group of angry weapon-wielding men. I love it. It's a long take, which means there are no edits, and long takes have a lot of moving parts, especially with fight choreography involved. The thing about fight choreography, and particularly if you're doing a long take like this, you can't stop. If you mess up your positioning or you mess up the choreography, you just have to kind of make it work and hope that everybody else can kind of cover you. There is only so much time you can allocate to shooting any one particular scene, and if you can't do what your director wanted, then you're going to give your editor a headache trying to stitch something coherent together. This works really pretty well. We talked in my Last Jedi video about long takes and their strengths and limitations, and while a lot of the same things apply here, they've done something absolutely genius with it to make their lives a little bit easier. Group fights are an order of magnitude more difficult to choreograph than one-on-one fights, because not only do you have to choreograph the people who are currently fighting with each other, you also have to figure out something to do with the people who are, in effect, hanging around waiting for their turn. The way The Witcher gets around this is by having this scene become essentially a series of very short one-on-one fights, one after the other, which maintains the impression that Geralt is skilled at fighting multiple opponents, but minimises the amount of time when people are hanging around in the back of the shot not attacking him. There's even a point near the end of the fight where there are two guys next to each other and you think, oh, are we going to do 2 versus 1 here? But no. Instead, we get a demonstration of Geralt's combat magic as he forces them back, and then kills them one after the other. Do you know who the hidden heroes of this piece are? The camera operator and the guy who guided the camera operator backwards through this fight scene while men are swinging poles and half-length swords at each other. Henry Cavill thinks you're awesome, and so do I. Now, the scene will obviously still require a lot of learning and practice from Henry Cavill and the fight performers, but it nearly eliminates all of that hanging around in the shot waiting to attack someone. It isn't like 100% eliminated, but very nearly. And keeping each encounter very short means Henry Cavill doesn't have quite so much to learn, it keeps up the momentum of the fight, and it emphasises the fact that Geralt is just supernaturally skilled at killing dudes. Now, the disadvantage and the strength of a long take like this is that you can't cut away at all, so this all has to be Henry Cavill, who is not, in fact, a stuntman. Luckily, he is a man who loves his swords and is pretty skilled at this fake fighting malarkey. And because he's fighting people whose job is fight performance, his fighting will also be better. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it in a minute. Henry Cavill's sword fighting skills are actually really important for The Witcher as a series because it means that when he's fighting, you can still have his face in the shot, like, nearly all of the time. And, you know, Witcher, so fighting is a significant component of what he does. As I mentioned in my last Jedi video, if you can't clearly see the actor's face, it's probably not actually them, it's a fight performer. But if you can't see the actor's face, you can't connect emotionally to them in quite the same way. And this emotional connection malarkey is very, very important for Geralt as our main character, especially because his temperament is stoic and uncommunicative. So you need to see his eyes particularly to get that expression of emotion from a character who's not exactly a touchy-wutchy, huggy-wuggy, talk about his feelings sort. The long take is an option in your screen combat toolbox that is really tricky to get right, especially if you have to use the actors rather than fight performers, but potentially really effective. You can hide nothing, but that means that you can hide nothing, and so you can just kind of put it all out there, which makes it potentially much more immersive than something with lots of editing. You stay with Geralt through all of the blood and gore to emphasize that this world is dark and gritty and we don't shy away from that sort of thing. You emphasize Geralt's skills as a sword fighter and you connect with his character. In addition, this kind of mechanical trick that means it's just one after the other emphasizes the fact that these guys are mooks, they're henchmen. Geralt doesn't care about them, and neither should you. They have a boss, fighting them is the fastest way to get to Renfri and not be killed, and so the emphasis is on efficiency. So far so good, right? And then we get to Renfri, and Geralt is now fighting a named character who is played by an actress, and they do something completely different. With the Geralt versus Renfri fight, it's much more traditionally edited, shall we say. And that was also an excellent choice. Going back to The Last Jedi again for a second, Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver trained with the stunt guys for 6 months before they shot that scene. Emma Appleton had 4 weeks, and like, no shade, that's just not enough time to turn someone into the necessary level of badass that Renfri is supposed to be. I love stage combat, and I recommend it to everyone because it's insanely fun, but it's hard to do well. It's easier if you have a martial arts background, which I don't, or a dance background, which I also don't, but even so, it's hard physical work that requires consistency and muscle memory and time to get good at. So with that and your shooting schedule in mind, they made the very obvious choice that they trained their actress as best they could. They got her to do as much as possible for the close-ups and the reaction shots and, you know, the acting. And then for the tricky bits, which is to say the bits where you pass large pieces of metal near to each other's faces or necks, they got Lucy Cork. And then in the editing room, you cut between the two to make it into a cohesive whole. Which is a perfectly solid choice for this fight scene, for 2 reasons. First, because you don't want a relatively untrained actress doing complicated fight choreography. It's risky. She could hurt herself. She could hurt Henry Cavill. Either of those would be very bad things. It's not the best use of her skill set, is what I'm saying. And we should also note, and this is the other reason that the Renfri fight is really solid, that because Henry Cavill is fighting stunt performers, his performance will be better because of it. They will obviously be excellent because they're all on the stunt register and they've been doing this for years, but his performance will be improved because he's fighting them. You see, I said we'd get back to it. On my first stage combat course, which was a week-long intensive, we had an odd number of people in my group, and so when you learned a new technique, you had to pick a new partner, but so that we had even numbers of people, the teacher would sub in with one of us. I definitely felt more like I knew what I was doing when the teacher was my partner. People who have never done stage combat before, martial artists aside, are generally not very good at stage combat. This is not a shock. But it's a whole lot easier to be good when your partner knows what they're doing. When I was a newbie, I mostly focused on myself during fights, like, can I remember the choreography? What am I supposed to be doing? What are my lines? Now that I'm at least somewhat improved, I can focus on my partner during the fight and what we are doing. And so they not only have someone who's better on a technical level to work with, they also have someone who's acting with them as opposed to acting in their general direction. It helps. The people who do this for a living can lift their partner's performance to a level that they would not otherwise have been able to attain. Because a lot of the way that you sell a fight is in your reactions to things. And they can make it look like they were inches from death and that you're a total badass. The better your partner is, the better you can be. It's basically just like very violent dancing. The fight performer henchmen fighting Geralt are there to make him look good, and they have the training to do that. Having Lucy Cork as Renfri fighting Geralt not only means that Renfri's fighting style is going to look good, it also means that Renfri's physical reactions and Emma Appleton's acting bits can combine to make Geralt look good. And from a storytelling standpoint, you can sub in a stunt woman quite handily in this scene because, let's face it, the show is called The Witcher, not the Shrike. It is Geralt's story, and so you are naturally going to focus more on him. Another advantage of having Lucy Cork fighting as Renfri is that you can do much more complicated things than you could manage with an actress who is not trained in fight performance. And so that gives the fight choreographer and the creative team in general a lot more options when they're thinking about how best to tell the story through the fight. The better you get at stage combat, the easier the basics become, which is always good, but also the more fancy things you can do. And who doesn't love a bit of fanciness? Oh, and the longer your fight's phrases can be, should you need them to be so. Actually, let's talk about phrases for a minute because the Renfri fight demonstrates them really well. When you learn fight choreography, you don't just learn the whole thing in one go because that would be terrible and inefficient. You learn it in sections. We are going to call these sections phrases. I don't think that's the official name for them. I don't even know if there is an official name for them, but I'm going to call them phrases because I like the idea that they're akin to conversation, or music, or both. Phrases can be long or short, but they usually have some kind of built-in pause at the end, so that your characters can break apart and circle menacingly, or change positions in some other way, or they can eyeball each other, or they can say dialogue. Basically, there is a change of some sort, which means that you're not just mindlessly hacking at each other for 3 minutes until everyone's forgotten what you were fighting about in the first place and you're all really tired. Topic for another day, perhaps. And like with dialogue, long and short fight phrases can be used for different dramatic purposes. The group fight in the alley is a series of very short phrases. 3 moves and you're dead. 2 moves and you're dead. Small number of moves and you're dead. Because the point of that fight is emphasizing Geralt's skill, but with the Renfri fight, we mix it up a little bit. The first phrase of the fight is Renfri attacking a lot, and the first sort of pause comes with Geralt stabbing his sword into the ground to parry. I swear this is going to be the last reference I make to my previous video, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't help it. She's obviously very serious about killing him though, so second phrase, he starts to fight back with a big fancy spin, which is technically entirely unnecessary because it telegraphs intent, but Geralt is a Witcher and his canonical fighting style, both in the books and in the computer games, is spin heavy. The word pirouette is used a lot, so when Geralt fights there are going to be lots of spins. Deal with it. And after a bit of back and forth in the second section, he doesn't take the obvious opportunity to kill her and instead slaps her in the face and shoves her up against a wall, which means we can have more expository dialogue from Renfri. And they can take advantage of the fact that this scene is going to have cuts in it anyway, to set the pace, to change the pace, to push in for close-ups, whatever you want to do. These are things you just can't do as efficiently if you're doing a single continuous take. This close-up on Renfri is a case in point. We've just had a multiple-man demonstration of how very efficient Geralt is at killing people when he wants them dead. The longer phrases in this fight are not just a demonstration of the respective skill levels of Renfri and Geralt, they're also a really big clue that he really doesn't want to kill her. Even though Renfri may be a more dangerous fighter than her henchman, she is still very much outclassed. That said, this second phrase is not solely defensive on Geralt's part. He is now trying to persuade her, with violence, to do what he wants. Which is to say, run away and live your life and be free, little shrike. But because the character is not really big on making unnecessary mouth noises, when they stop for exposition, it's Renfri who does all the talking, and we just get close-ups of Geralt's face so that, we can understand the emotions that he's feeling right now. It's all in the eyes. The third phrase of the fight is longer, and it is on. What's important in the long, fast sections is not so much the precise details of what they're doing, as long as they know what they are. It's more about that intent and speed and skill. And it can be difficult to parse if you don't know what you're looking at, but that's not really important. What's important is that you get the impression of great speed and skill and, indeed, fanciness, if fanciness is indeed required. Renfri does not go for fancy. Renfri is out for blood. Geralt is brutal and effective, but nevertheless fancy. Pirouette, Geralt. Pirouette like a ballerina with a sharp piece of metal in your hand. Fourth and fifth phrases, which are very short, only 2 moves each. You think that we're at the end of this fight, you think he's got her, but no, he's still trying not to kill her, and she's still completely willing to take advantage of that. And the 6th and 7th phrases, when she really goes for it with both weapons, he's still trying to get her to stop. Again, it's all in the eyes. In this case, crazy eyes versus determined eyes. The editing isn't intrusive, but it allows us to go close in on the reactions of Renfri and Geralt, and mixing in the wider shots which are far away enough that we can tell what they're actually doing. Remember how I said that phrases are like dialogue? Well, the last one is when everything slows right down. It's not slow per se, but they really want you to know exactly what's happening, so compared to the other phrases, it's not that fast. We need you to know that this character, who has a name, who we've been learning about and spending time with, and who Geralt got his freak on with, is dying. And while she is dying by her own choice, she is making Geralt do it. Which is why the tempo slows right down, to emphasize that pain and resignation and resolve. Don't want to kill you. Will kill you if it's the only way to prevent you from killing me. And then the camera hangs around on them in the stillness for a second, to contrast with how efficiently and mercilessly Geralt took out those guys in the alley. He didn't care about them, but he cared about her. It is an entire conversation carried on with very few words, and it looks great. There's enough of Emma Appleton that you get the nuances of her performance, enough of Lucy Cork to show off the amazing fighting skills of the characters. The editing is excellent, it's just really good. As you will hear me say often, if you are a subscriber, there is no wrong way to prefer when it comes to creating fights. There are just different methods with different strengths and different limitations which can help you tell stories in different ways. The henchman fight takes advantage of Henry Cavill's skills and some really impressive camera work and effects to get one long take. The Renfri fight uses skillful editing to balance the need to see the actors' reactions with the level of technical skill that you get from fight performers. I mean, if all you've got is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, but if you have a whole toolbox, why not use it? It is a shame I'm too wussy to watch the rest of the series, but you should definitely watch some more of mine. Stick around, subscribe, and if anybody wants to release like the PG version of The Witcher, yeah, I know, it'll be short. I'd be totally down for that. See you next time.